All right, welcome to another episode of DUCKIT, where we host Hisham, the founder of Freedom. Thanks for joining us, man. Actually,
it's such a ridiculous title, isn't it? Hisham from Freedom is founder of Freedom.
Yeah. You started Freedom.
Freedom
Because of you. Because of you, we have Freedom.
LLC, FZE.
Anyway, I've known Hisham. I've known you, man. I don't know now. It's probably been, I don't know, 5 years?
5 years?
5 years. Yeah, and actually, it's actually quite a funny story. I think the first year that I knew you, I probably didn't like you very much. I think you and me butted heads quite a lot. And today, we find it difficult not to speak, at least on a weekly basis. so our relationship has evolved quite a bit. But yeah, I would love you to kind of just introduce yourself and how you got to creating Freedom.
Yeah, it's like a reverse marriage. We started off on the wrong foot. We're slowly getting close together. And I think we hated each other at the beginning, but we respected each other by the endish. Anyway, so what was the question again? I wasn't listening.
How did Freedom happen? I mean, I know you were...
How did Freedom happen? Okay, yeah. So the short version of this is I was working big agency, as the typical agency story starts. Working big agency, realized, hang on a second, I can have a go at this myself. But I worked in advertising primarily, but I didn't want to go down that route because I think advertising as an industry needs to work itself out. You know, the way you sell creative and the way that there's awards that clients don't care about and clients that awards don't care about. So the first kind of project that I did that took me away from advertising a bit was actually with Christian on Kareem. Was part of the agency side team that was rebranding and introducing the Wink to Kareem. Yeah. And it was the first time when I realized that branding was actually quite fun because it's not like a campaign that rolls out and then 6 months later no one even remembers it unless you're really addicted to kind of awards in the advertising world in that sense. But it's something that kind of stays, and it was something that I really enjoyed creating. So I decided that I wanted to create more brands. Scott Leader and I and Raj created another brand called Panda, which is basically just us kind of like from a branding perspective and a production perspective, creating our own kind of Japanese card game. You have the link there, panda.cards, buy from Virgin.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure we put it up there. Yes.
But the whole process of it just gets more fun and more fun. So we just decided to carry that on and work with more brands. I think because of Kareem's success in terms of like the kind of region-wide outlook, there's lots of startups coming about, lots of tech companies coming about, there's lots of on-demand technology launching. So we positioned ourselves quite nicely in that space and started working on a lot of branding pieces from there, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem arguably started a whole wave, right? A wave of different types of brands, ambitious startups. I think the region itself kind of got ignited on the back of that brand. I mean, the power of the Kareem brand it's like the gift. It's like a gift that keeps on giving. You know what I mean? Like, I think my career arguably is based on that. I think hearing that your success and your taste of branding comes from there as well, I think is quite awesome. But creating that brand and building that brand was not an easy thing to do. I mean, I remember when we first met, the first time we met, I had just changed my role at Kareem, and I took over kind of the marketing department in the midst of the rebrand. I think you guys were like in the last kind of stretch of the brand. I think you guys were putting together the guidelines and all that stuff and the design systems and this and that, and honing kind of the values and all that stuff. And I remember that was kind of a turbulent time. I was the in-house guy that was anti-agency. I was fundamentally against agencies, and I think that's how I
set up your own advisory now.
And now I've become my own worst enemy. But
I'm telling you, reverse marriage, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I still remember it almost like it was yesterday because of how kind of monumental it was, right? I think in the region, I don't think any brand had ever had a tone that had that tone. I don't think a brand ever had that courage, and especially the way that we did the rollout. And we were hopefully trying to get Nader on the call as well at some point, and hopefully us three, four, we're going to have a conversation. But Nader is the missing link of this launch of the Careem brand, because he came up with him and his team came up with the whole concept of the slingshot and putting it all together. But the Careem brand in itself and that rebrand, I think, laid the foundation of the bold brands that we see now in the region. And I kind of feel like we're kind of extending on that momentum with every brand that we create. Do you feel the kind of same feeling when you're creating the brands that you are today?
At least we try to. I think bold brands of the region is something that we haven't kind of reached yet. To be honest, I can't think of anyone else that really has like a bold or even cheeky kind of outlook on its brand system or its brand kind of like outlook, especially when they do advertising, stuff like that. You've got a few people that kind of do some stuff that's a bit cheekier, a bit kind of like going against the grain, but I don't think that people feel comfortable really pushing the boat that far. I mean, even before the rebrand, you've got the Better Than Uber campaign. I mean, when have you really seen like a kind of a challenger brand throwing shade at a bigger brand like that? You haven't. I mean, I tried it with another brand where we wanted to we had a massive billboard that we bought. We really wanted to use that as an opportunity to stake up, just like Better Than Uber. We wanted to do the same thing. But I think when it comes to kind of like, at the end of the day, people have jobs and they don't want to maybe rattle the cage that much. They don't want to go for it. So, but I do think in terms of like people starting up their own thing, I think that's actually more brave than maybe putting out a billboard for 2-3 weeks, So I think off the back of Careem, people being brave and starting up their own companies and seeing how it can be done, following some sort of blueprint, brand-wise, communication-wise, technology-wise, whatever. I think, of course, it was the main catalyst that I can see in the region.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think we were super lucky with the founders and the leaders of Careem at the time. At least I was. I mean, Mudassir and Magdas had a lot of courage, letting us do a lot of the things that we did. The Better Than Uber campaign, the Slingshot campaign. I mean, I don't think of any leader, any CEOs in the region that I think would have had the guts to do those campaigns. So I think that's true. I also think when I look at Careem today, I don't know if that brand is still the same brand, right? I think in that moment in time, that tone, that warfare between, the Uber and the Careem, that market share kind of fight that was happening, that type of a brand was perfect for that era. But today, I don't find that the Careem brand has that raw DNA anymore, and that's probably warranted. And when I look back, I think that timing was perfect. That market, that grow at any cost, that it was like a proper brawl for the market, So I think today Careem looks the same, but feels a bit different.
It's more of a commodity. I mean, I don't think I've engaged with any advertising from Careem for a long time. It's on my phone. If I need it, it's there. It's not going to get me to go in there for anything else. So maybe that's the natural progression of companies like that. Maybe if another challenger comes along, now they're part of Uber, they'll need to develop a personality again.
Yeah, 100%. And are you seeing, like, I guess what you do today is quite similar to what we do. You do a lot of brand development and stuff like that. Are you seeing remnants of people that want to have that boldness in newer industries, or are you seeing more kind of the typical kind of brand building, formal kind of approaches to how you're going to have, I guess, the tones and the narratives and the messaging and stuff like that? Are you seeing people try to be bold, or do you think that's a one-hit wonder that we got, once upon a time in 2015,
17,
16,
15,
17? Well,
16.
I can't even remember. It was pre-COVID. That's what
everything that came before and what comes after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do I think people are being bold in terms of the people that we deal with? I think that the ambition to be bold is still there.
Yeah.
you know. But I think the growth of, I'm going to use these massive inverted commas, growth marketing, everything has to work and kind of like get you more money, bang for your buck, more pounds on the pounds, whatever you want to call it. I think people kind of don't believe in the long-term brand vision anymore. So they're like, yeah, we can be really cheeky, we can be really kind of provocative, but as long as the campaign really, really works and it's turning over those kind of tickers that we want to see. I think that's the only difference. Whereas I think Karim probably didn't have that much of a kind of, I mean, because it was so long ago, didn't have that much of a kind of growth, kind of like it has to react now. Maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't on the inside of it. But maybe there could be like, you know what, we just need to go swinging. And I don't know if people who have got loads of kind of series of funding and have to kind of report back to the stakeholders and shareholders and all that kind of stuff, can actually have that kind of swinging ambition. And I think that's the difference really with Karim. Like they were literally just swinging. It was like David and Goliath.
Absolutely. I do think that internally that was the point, by the way. Internally, the idea was to carve out our position and kind of, you know, anchor kind of our ownership in the region.
And the funny thing is, the reason why, sorry to interrupt, Christian, the reason why it was so brave as well, which I think people overlook, especially looking back, is because what you guys were saying was actually bullshit. Because Uber was actually better. Karim wasn't better. Uber was actually better, but you guys still went, yeah, we're better than Uber. Who? Karim? Oh, now I know who Karim is.
Confident denial, you know what I mean?
You know, yeah, it's like Trump. It's like Trump advertising. There we go. Just
putting Karim and Trump in the same sentence. I mean, that's going to hurt the Karimers.
Yeah, and to put it even further, thinking that I did something that was Trumpist is just super weird. But yeah, cool, man. And man, honestly, like, you know, obviously all three of us on this call and what we do for a living, you know, is proof in the pudding that we believe in building brands. But it's becoming more and more difficult, I find, to have stakeholders or organizations that understand the fundamentals of why or how you build a brand. I think a lot of people are arguing that the whole scale or die era is done, and it's not all about grow at any cost. It's no longer about just burning money, and it's about profitability and stuff. But still, I feel building a brand, at least in the region, with the, you know, in the markets where we operate, people just don't fundamentally understand why you would want to do that, and what it means to build a brand. I think.
But there's a serious gap in the market. You know what there is for in the region specifically? Because globally, we've got the Nikes, we've got Apples, we've got all of these brands that people, you feel, you yourself, especially Christian, you feel part of, man. You really feel for it.
Yeah.
But I always ask people this question. I always say, like, apart from Karim, maybe Soul, maybe like one or two other brands scattered about, is there anything that people have like really got behind as a community? Is there anything that people could be like, you know what, I feel like they stand for, I stand for, or even like quality wise, I'm there in terms of like, that's my expectation, they've really met it, or service wise, like these are the important things of a brand, you know? I don't think that there is anything that's anyone who's a brand, apart from a few that you can hold in your hand, that have really kind of like taken that mantle. And I think there is, maybe globally, there's kind of the scaling model and all that kind of stuff is not really relevant. It's all about profitability and purpose and all those things that you said before. But I think there's a real gap in the Middle Easterners' hearts for more brands to fill.
But why? Why don't we have those brands? Like, I still can't figure it out. Is it just that people don't give a shit and they don't work hard enough, or they're not here long enough? That's a transient population.
Yeah.
What is it?
I think one of the things is consistency. I think that's something that we really struggle with our kind of more legacy clients, especially when you're the one that's been in the room the longest, and you're really trying to kind of like, hey, yeah, but we've been doing like this for the last 6 months. I'm like, yeah, because you have to remain consistent to build a brand. If you're like a chameleon and you keep changing the way you look, sound, your photography, kind of things that you offer, etc., you're just gonna be resetting the button every time you're communicating with someone. So I think consistency is key, and I think that the mentality here is to think of things in kind of like 12 months breaks, you know? It's like, yeah, this year we're going to achieve this year we're going to achieve that. No one has, I mean, not no one, sorry. I've worked with a couple of people who have like a 3 to 5 to 10 year vision, but not, maybe they don't execute it. Maybe the whole department gets fired and they have to all move back or go to a similar company next. But I think that's one of the key things.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think like all global companies do work on, you know, cycles as well? But that fundamental base of that purpose of why they were created to begin with was properly established. You know what I mean? I feel like organizations here were never built on a foundation of a brand. They're always based on, there's a functional gap in this industry. I think I can fill it and make some money. But the whole DNA of the brand, the whole thinking about, you know, why it was built, what it stands for, which community it serves, what, you know, et cetera, all these things were not kind of factored in from the, you know, basic fundamentals of when they started. I feel like even Apple, I mean, I'm sure they have quarterly targets, annual targets, they have product launches, they have this, and they're very cyclical too. I'm sure they do everything in like 6 months or 12 months increments. But
I don't think their brand is attached to that stuff though.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the brand has that foundation irrespective of what happens on these cycles. You know what I mean? Like the cycles are cycles and the company's day to day is its own beast, but the brand is clearly defined, what it stands for, all that stuff. But that was because they had a founder and they had a leader that really articulated that, right? That was really good at kind of building out that strategy and that vision. Whereas here, I don't think people think like that. I don't think they see a vision or you know, have that kind of mindset. You know what I mean? I just,
is that because it's more following than innovating to an extent? I mean, you know, arguably, if you're going to build a brand and you understand the true foundations and where you're trying to get to, then, you know, rather than kind of looking at something that already exists or something that's very similar and then almost trying to get there as well, I'd argue that that's potentially a phase that we're currently going through. It's controversial, yeah. I can tell by the year. It's like you could hear it.
I'm going to take it even more controversial. But if we look at the ownership structures and why people have launched brands that we're not mentioning but talking about, what are their motivations? Are their motivations not to just make money, or are they motivations to build a community of creators or whatever these fluffy things that people pretend that they're doing? No, their motivations are to make money. And even if you look at something like Kareem, we're going to go back there. The motivations were to make money, but I think that the founders also had sub-motivations also, because they knew that they were the first ones doing something this big. So therefore, I feel like the motivation later became about changing the region, about doing something positive, and they were basically going to be the arch nemesis of Uber, and they had to be positive because Uber, especially at the time, was so negative. But if we look at the creators of Nike or the creators of Apple, and think about when they launched their companies and what they were trying to do. They were trying to make money, but they were trying to do something else. Whereas I can't say the same for a lot of companies that I either have kind of worked with or are kind of like exposed to now. You know, it's all about money. And when it's all about money, as much fluff of, yeah, but we also want to have a purpose and sustainability and this, that, and the other. But yeah, but you just want to make money. And copying something that's obviously making millions of dollars in Europe or Asia or South America or wherever, and putting it here and just throwing a logo on top of it is probably the easiest way to make money.
But that, I think, goes back to, I think, what Steve's saying. It's like you're either an opportunist, which is the way I'm going to interpret what you described, Hisham. So you're an opportunist. You saw a gap in the market. You're like, oh, fuck, great opportunity, dollar signs, amazing, let's do it. Or you're an innovator, which is what Steve is saying. Like, I want to do things differently. I want to, you know, create value. I want to have a purpose behind, you know, just not only just make money, right? So I think if you're an opportunist, which seems to be most of the businesses in the region, it's very hard to build a brand that's exciting, that's meaningful, that's purpose-driven, that stands for something. But if you're an innovator, then fundamentally from the basis, you're different, right? So maybe that's actually what it is. Maybe the region never believed in itself enough to create you know, their own services or products, right? Maybe that lack of vision or focus is what was there. Maybe Kareem is proving that, you know, that's not true. We can do our own stuff. We can build our own solution.
Go back to that manifesto on your manifesto on your wall.
Yeah,
we should share a picture of that.
yeah, I should.
That's in the office, actually. Oh.
Yeah, it's in our office. Yeah, which we haven't been in like 8 weeks. Actually, more.
About 10 weeks now.
10 weeks, yeah. It's crazy.
Going back on the boldness thing as well. Do you I have a view that over the last few years, brands have become more scared. Like the fear of judgment, fear of criticism, fear of their customers, fear of missing the trend. Like we talk about being bold, and you've got the odd brand that stands up and stands out and stands for something. But that, for me, the boldness aspect is now, it's being lost a bit, because I think that there's that fear aspect coming into, you know, how a brand moves. And I don't know where that started. Some brands that cut through, I mean, you can see brands that are bold. I mean, the one that stands out most to me is probably, in terms of how they consistently execute, is a brand like Burger King, for example. You know, the way they challenge McDonald's with absolute, like, from complete creative freedom to stand out and be bold and consistently. But for me, I was going to bring up
Burger King, actually, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to talk about.
Because I'm split. I'm completely split.
Yeah, what, love or hate?
Listen, at the end of the day, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and they consistently like win the PR game with nice gimmicks that are well thought through, and they smash it PR wise. But there's always a but. It feels like it doesn't feel like. I feel like it might be just this advertising, LinkedIn kind of users and that kind of stuff that are just really, really, really kind of enjoying what they're doing. We can't measure it, but do you think they're selling more Whoppers because of it? Or is it a long game brand-wise that they're trying to carve themselves out, like you said, as the kind of like the provocateur of the McDonald's brand, you know, like we do stuff a bit funnier and more bold? Because it doesn't really tie back to the product that much. You know, I
don't know,
they don't innovate that much in terms of the actual product itself. You know, you go to McDonald's or Burger King, they have their mainstays, they have the seasonal stuff. I'm a McDonald's man. They have the mainstays, seasonal stuff. They don't really do anything different. It feels like the advertising over the top is just a bit more provocative.
I feel like if this goes like out to kind of the Burger King and McDonald's diehards, like this is going to cause a problem.
I mean, listen, just to give the contrary argument to that, I think I agree. I think they're good at like getting all the buzz, right? You know what I mean? I think they're really good at PR. I think that's for sure, hands down. But some of their PR has been strategic in terms of kind of qualifying kind of their quality, you know, trademarks like Never Frozen, like the campaign they did of the rotten burger, with no preservatives or this and all that. So I think they're very good at PR. I would agree that it's not consistent throughout the brand. I think it's like they're very good at PR. I don't think that they're very good at like, or maybe I'm not active enough in, you know, fast food, but I don't think that they're as good as, let's say, McDonald's in innovation and product and stuff like that. Totally agree. But fundamentally, if the objective is to stay top of mind, hands down, it's Burger King for me all the time. They're on the, you know, if I'm going to have fast food anytime soon, it'll probably be Burger King, just because they're just always top of mind, right? Because they've been so active kind of on social media, whereas McDonald's hasn't really.
Yeah, but that's why product is so important when it comes to brand, because I'm the same. I'll be like top of mind Burger King, and then I remember I don't like it. It's happened so many times. I'm like, no, but I'll just get a double cheeseburger instead. A couple of those.
Oh yeah.
That's why it's exactly. See.
I mean, but Burger King fries.
Being a creative,
come on.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah.
No, I would say Zarub fries.
Really?
Zarub.
Zarub fries are amazing.
They're crunchy. Yeah.
Yeah, they're crunchy.
It's true.
The Cajun seasoning.
Yeah. Man, thank God we recorded this after Ramadan.
Yeah.
But it is a shame that we're recording over Zoom. If we were in the office, we would have probably ordered some by the time we're finished. We'd be able to give a taste test.
Yeah.
No, look, creatively, Burger King, like when you think about the marketing and the, you know, the way they position themselves, the creative side of the way they go in, and you spoke about, and this will bring us onto the topic of awards and the awards industry in the creative space. You know, literally the foundations of their marketing has been driven by, you know, the Cannes Lion Awards for how they've gone in, and that award space they've almost dominated in that creative space, which is why it's quite interesting that you're a little bit anti the Burger King space.
No, I'm not anti. I said split.
Oh,
split.
Okay.
50-50.
So do you want to give the other side now?
Well, yeah, no. I thought I gave the other side already. That wasn't a split. Maybe I'm 70-30.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny we're starting to talk about the awards. I want to jump into awards. I want to ask you guys a question real quick. No, sorry. I'm going to make a statement and then I'm going to say discuss. Sorry, I can't. It's Ramadan still for me. I think that if award ceremonies, especially stuff like Cannes, the really, really big ones, didn't exist, creatives would have to be paid more. And I'll tell you why, because I think Christian's looking up there thinking, what does he mean? I speak to a lot of creatives and I have very provocative conversations about awards. And when you whittle down to it, it's actually just recognition and reward. That's why they want to do it. And I do feel like, because creatives are some of the hardest working people, and if you think about the hours they put into stuff and what they create all the time, they're quite low paid compared to kind of a lot of other people, especially strategists and client servicing people. So I really think that if you didn't have that kind of, don't worry, you can go for a jolly in Cannes and you can go there and you can have a trophy and put it on your LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. I feel like if they didn't have that, they would just have to be paid more because there would be something missing, you know. And I think that it's really important to discuss this.
So, okay, hold on. It is really important to discuss this for like the 6 people that are going to watch this. But here's what I think. I think generally speaking, yeah, you're probably right. I think if there were no awards, then some sort of compensation or reward mechanism would have to exist outside of that, which might mean more money for the general creative population. However, what I would say is that I think the awards get that little crew of, you know, back patting kind of creatives better paid. So within that little clique of creatives who, you know, hand each other awards and review each other's work, and within that little sphere of influence of the top of the creme de la creme of creatives, I think the fact, if you have, you know, a Cannes Lion and you have a, what's the local one called again?
Links.
Yeah.
And you have a Lynx and you have this, the more you have, the more you're recognized, and the more your kind of stature in the creative community is higher, and the more you'll get kind of paid by the different organizations to do so, right? To do your job. So I think within a small top of the pyramid world, I think the awards get those guys really well paid.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And then I think the bottom of that pyramid is basically the exact opposite. If you don't have a Cannes Lion to your name, you don't have a Lynx to your name, you don't have, you know, any advertising or creative kind of reward to your name, then you're just a dime a dozen, and you're probably really badly paid. But yeah, I agree. It's a reward and recognition mechanism that people kind of strive for, even if they're underpaid. It's a great kind of recognition of your work. I also think that, I mean, having seen how those things kind of get handed out and what the process is, I mean, just like a lot of awards in different industries, they're not necessarily fair on a level playing field, right? It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like, it's not a true, you know, representation of the industry.
It's how well you filled the form.
Exactly. And whether or not you're liked, right? And depending on the mood of that year and who we want to kind of, what areas we want to get into, right? It's super political, right? It's like, oh, we want to get into that industry, or we want to, you know, be closer with these people, or that, you know, or that crew, or this crew. So, I mean, that being said, you know, the Slingshot got the Misfits an award. So that's great. And I think that was absolutely deserving. I don't even remember what the silver and the gold were.
Did you know they got booed
at the awards?
Who did?
Yeah.
No way.
I'm not going to say who booed them, but I was on the table. Look at my LinkedIn.
Oh, come on. Got it.
Oh shit.
They
Really?
got booed, and that was like, they got booed and then clapped more because people were like, why are you booing them? They clearly did something that's innovative and wasn't
because they were
like
the
all these,
misfits
like,
from the creative crowd at that time, right?
Exactly. So they actually got booed, which was quite funny. But the people booing them actually got the more publicity because everyone was talking about it, and it was very specific people booing them.
Yeah, I mean,
We're not going to say names.
I have an idea.
We can cut this back. We can
I have an idea, but like, yeah, I didn't. Neither never told me actually. Isa and neither Ross never told me. Never really talked about it much, to be honest. But we only left the award and said "Mabruk, Mabruk, bro, Mabruk to you," and that was kind of it. But all that's
quite interesting that they got booed for a genuine campaign that actually, you know, really did well from a business standpoint. Whereas there's a lot of campaigns that I've created that are not even aired, or they're aired on TV once, right? So
yeah. There's a lot of stuff that happens. I think everyone knows that, but I think it was because they got booed for best craft. I think that was why. I think it was best craft, and obviously you had people that spent like $500,000 on like ridiculous directors from LA and all that kind of stuff. So I think they felt like we just spent $500,000, we didn't win.
Okay, next
Boo!
time. Yeah, but I mean,
but do clients care about awards?
No, not really.
I don't think so.
Never have.
I don't think so. But it definitely, like, if they do get an award, you know, as an unintended consequence of it, then it's like they're really proud. They're really happy. I remember when we got the nomination, I was like, "Wow, that's fucking cool," you know. But it wasn't like I didn't give a shit about it.
But it's good for the closer. But even like when you're choosing an agency or someone to do your next campaign.
Yeah, it's good. No, it doesn't factor in kind of past, like when, I mean, I went through this recently. Like, it's not something you necessarily look at from the creative space standpoint. But when you've got an agency partner and, you know, that partner is performing well within their creative sphere or within their industry, then and you've got a good relationship with them, then that's healthy and that's good, right? So it creates a different type of vibe and energy within either, and whether that's your kind of, as a client, that's your work that's performing, or whether it's, you know, within the agency itself, but some other clients, it creates that buzz and vibe around the business, which is actually very healthy for every client that's working with that agency. So
and they could attract better talent as well.
And the talent thing is probably one of the biggest things. Attracting quality talent.
That's what I was gonna say. And speaking of talent, man, why is talent even more difficult today than it was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I feel like finding creative talent these days is impossible. I mean, more and more. I don't know about in the region. I mean, I don't know about you, Hisham, but finding like good, original, high quality creative talent is either going to cost you, you know, an arm and a leg outside of what you can afford, or you have to go look outside of the region. There's like a huge gap in the market, and I feel like 3-4 years ago it wasn't like that. I feel like it's gotten worse on the creative side. I don't know how you feel about that.
I have a strong opinion about this, to be honest, and I think that it's the route to market that creatives are taking now. I think back in the day, back in the day, I'm not that old. Maybe if you're like 30s, mid 30s, and a creative, you didn't go to university to study advertising, or you didn't go to university to study the specific output of what your job is going to be. You had people that studied arts, film, they wanted to be directors, writers wanted to write novels and all that kind of stuff. And you had this raw talent that was then shaped in and used, they would use their talent in advertising. And I think you get more of a kind of like a genuine, authentic approach to stuff that way. Whereas now I feel like you can literally go and do a course on digital graphic designing and like specific outputs and very vocational degrees. And I feel like people just go through the motions that way. You know, they feel like they've done it already at university level. You know, they haven't had to kind of crack a new industry that they never thought they were going to go into, all that kind of stuff. But I do think that as a result of that, on the flip side, you do have better technical skills But I just think that when you're looking at talent, and I know the word you're using is talent, not execution. When you look at someone that really has a talent that can blow your mind and think 3 steps ahead of you, it's a bit lacking because they've already been told what steps to think about. So that's what I generally think about. And I don't think it's regional, by the way. I think it's global. I mean, I see it in the UK, I see it here.
It's crazy, man. I think like right before COVID, we had a bunch of vacancies, and we started kind of looking for a bunch of talent, graphic designers, videographers, animators, etc. And in the region, it was just the caliber was just either really, really low, or the really good ones were just, you know, overpaid, and maybe we were cheap, so maybe they weren't overpaid, but maybe, you know, for me, I think when I compare, for example, Rocket Internet, Kareem days, and finding talent back then, I just felt that one, it was way more affordable, and then two, they were a lot more committed to kind of learning and to the craft, even if there was a gap. And today, because maybe we're a bit more kind of mature as people ourselves, and we've learned a bit more, and we have a lot more experience, we're looking for more we're kind of reading, I guess, personalities and characters more, and seeing that those that the talent gaps that we're trying to fill are not going to be filled, that we're going to have to create the talent ourselves. And I thought at this stage in where we are in the startup ecosystem, lots of companies being built, lots of content coming out, the age of social media, that content creators, creative minds, et cetera, and that talent that we're talking about would have evolved and caught up to what the market needs. But I still find ourselves looking in Europe, in Australia, in North America, in the UK, but locally not finding, I mean, for a place that's so kind of full of content and constantly on social media, when it comes to creative talent, I just feel that it's just extremely dry in caliber.
If we're thinking about hyper locally in terms of the UAE, there's not a lot of people, especially at that age where you want. I mean, think about the pool is actually really, really shallow. I mean, think about someone, you were lucky to get someone from university, one of the very few good universities out here, like the one in Sharjah, for example. But then there's a very small AUS. There's a very small, and then after that, people usually go to the places you're mentioning to go and forge their careers. So I think the talent pool is actually quite shallow, not just because of quality-wise, but actually the amount of people that we have. Like if you look at the UK, we're talking 20, 30 million people in London. No, I think that's the number. I'm not sure. Maybe during the
say 20, 30 million. Yeah.
During that's I think during the week, that's the amount of people in London.
That's probably
pre-COVID.
Right. Yeah.
The people that are working in that kind of world, and we're nowhere near that here. And then you have to think about Egypt, Saudi, etc., etc. But I just think that the economies of these countries are quite far behind in terms of like people putting themselves out there, getting the skill sets, being able to. One thing I go crazy about, I was talking to Malik the other day, is when I used to apply for a job when I was younger, I used to think about my cover letter for about 5 days, and then how my CV would relate to that specific role. And then if I had a portfolio and all that kind of stuff, 8 times out of 10, when I'm asking for someone to send something through like their portfolio, I'm lucky if I get hi attached. It's unbelievable. And then that sense of professionalism, maybe I'm sounding like an old fart here. But like at least say, I hope this email finds you well. All that kind of stuff.
Google will suggest it. All you have to press is tab.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think there's several reasons why behind. Maybe it's not just the raw talent, but I think it's just professionalism and the amount of people available to us.
I think coming out of COVID there, I mean, it's the talent pool is now global, right? If anything, there is zero reason to fear working with anyone, any part of the world, in theory. Now, given every company has managed to adapt to working from home, change their setups, people are more trusted to work from home. And I know from a creative and from a marketing space, this has been something we've been very used to for quite a long time. But now across the board, that talent shouldn't have any borders. There should be no restrictions. So if talent is borderless, then does that not overall, wouldn't that overall improvement in the creative space happen?
Yeah, of course. I don't think
many parts.
Yeah, of course. I don't think anyone, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I think my only issue is I want to hire local talent. You know what I mean? Like I wish there were videographers that understood the culture really, really well, but were also awesome at capturing and editing and telling stories through kind of film, right? I just feel like the brands would really benefit. The authenticity, the type of content that would come out of it would be very, very different. I'm not saying I'm opposed to working with international talent. I'm just saying inherently, I think it would benefit the whole region, right? And I think, you know, if we could, you know, create a workforce that has kind of growing experience in those fields, I think we would all benefit. Right? I agree with you. I think now everyone's going to work from home, and you know, our ability to work, you know, through Zoom has increased big time. But there is inherently, I wish there was local talent, there was more local talent, and there isn't.
Right? So the counter to that would be that that given that talent can be borderless now, that the bar then immediately gets raised in areas where talent isn't necessarily there, because that, you know, with companies like us being able to move further afield, then that means that the talent pool has to rise up with it or be left behind. As devastating as that sounds in one statement, but if the quality is improving, then wouldn't that overall over time, if we didn't think too short term, would improve the quality overall?
I mean,
I think we've had that happen here, at least for the last 6 years since I've been here. Like since I moved here, I was kind of quite shocked at how many South Americans and Brits and all that kind of stuff there were in the creative field, and you would hope that that would kind of like rise the level of creativity here. But I think there's a lot to say to harnessing creativity and how to improve that here. I mean, we're talking regionally, we're talking UAE. Like for example, in London, like you can just get on the tube and you're inspired. You know, whether it's for advertising, whether it's from what someone's wearing, whether it's just drifting off, whether it's going to a museum, South Bank, all that kind of stuff. Whereas here, it's kind of like there's a bit of a, I think for people that want to be inspired creatively, it's a bit one-dimensional. You kind of have to travel to get inspired about stuff.
And I would actually take it a step further. I mean, I feel like creativity isn't respected here, right?
Yeah,
I feel like if you're super creative and you have really bold ideas or different ideas, let's not use the word bold, but different ideas, and that type of creativity is often muzzled, is often kind of discarded, right? Like people don't necessarily have the courage to build brands and tell stories or create content that's kind of different. I think it goes back to the first conversation we had, where, you know, people are quite transient. They're not here. They're not consistently running brands. They don't necessarily have visions of where the brand wants to go. And when you have creatives that work in organizations that don't have that kind of courage, that kind of leadership, someone who's super, super creative can come here and after a few years can completely lose their mojo for lack of inspiration within the organizations that they work, right? I mean, I don't want to name names, but I mean, I know a few that I've been connected because of you, Hisham, that used to be superstars and now have completely lost their mojo because they've been working in the Middle East for Middle Eastern brands that don't take any risk or don't try anything creative. You know, I know a bunch of them, and it kind of feels like if you're super, super creative, it is a huge gamble to come out here because people here don't take risks. They want you to follow guidelines. They want to sanitize kind of, you know, their comms. That's also part of the problem, I think.
But you know what I think is a strange reason for our problem as well? People don't know how to do English and Arabic. You'll always see advertising that it's got a really strong English line. I can't read Arabic, but people tell me the Arabic line. I mean, you can even see in the fonts. The fonts would be like some super kind of like custom-made font, and the Arabic font would be like the equivalent of Times New Roman. Yeah. You know, I think a few brands do that quite well. And I think and then I'm sure it happens in some edge cases the other way around, where the Arabic line will be really strong, and then the English channel would just be a kind of like translation. And I feel like there's an opportunity there from a visual perspective and a language perspective for these two kind of worlds to live in harmony. And I don't feel like people are really exploring that as well. I feel like people either hire the Arabic talents, whether it's a copywriter, designer, or whoever, and they'll get the superstars from like Brazil or whatever, but they can't talk to each other because he's never going to learn Arabic and they're never going to work together in that way. So I feel like there's, in terms of being bold, I mean, the amount of times that I go in and I'm doing a brand exercise with someone and they just pull up the Dubai logo, the Visit Dubai logo, because purely by coincidence, it fits within each other. You know, the Arabic and English. And they're like, we want something like that. And the Arabic word is that long. And the English word is like ant. I'm like, how? It's just a coincidence. But away from logos and identities, I think that communication-wise, there could be something cool. I think we shared some stuff last year, Christian, where there was like a bilingual ad. There's a bit of Arabic, a bit of English, you know.
Yeah, that was cool.
One of the airport when the guy's getting stopped. So I think stuff like that is where we can be bold and creative. I feel like when it's bilingual comms, I feel like someone's losing out.
Yeah, 100%. Because
I feel like if you want to resonate, and this kind of takes us a bit off topic, but if you want to resonate with kind of that Arab English like speaking and you look in the region now, I think there's actually a really good, I mean, we've used this, I'm gonna bring up TikTok, but when you start following different people from the, you know, in the region, especially Arabs, as someone who's English and you're watching this, I mean, the insight that you get to the consumers via that platform, from a creative standpoint, from a humor standpoint, from a language standpoint, I think for many brands now, that's second to none. If you want to start trying to tackle that problem and take it a step further than just, you know, speaking English first, you know, Arabic first, you know, really trying to dive deep into the consumer psyche. And it's just free on a tap today when you go in there.
Yeah, but it's crazy, man. And then you see an ad on TikTok and you're like, why?
What the hell is that? What the fuck is that?
Like, I just saw like 15 people dancing and being complete idiots, and now you want me to buy a car? Come on, like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's just, I haven't seen, that's the worst thing about this space.
Yeah. I haven't seen one brand do anything good on TikTok.
Man,
no,
like
it's all been
completely out of context. It's completely like disruptive. Got nothing to do with the content you're watching. It's a complete shit show. Like,
I do the opposite. I close TikTok.
It's crazy, man.
I'm like, that's it. It's
crazy.
like
I see an ad on TikTok.
I've been there too long.
Yeah. Completely. None of the brands actually creatively use TikTok properly, by the way. I haven't seen one yet, at least in the region.
But by the way, it must be very difficult. I mean, think of the brand that you'd have to be and what you'd have to do. Like, it's something that, I mean, it has to be very experientially driven. You have to be involved in music. Like, I'm sure Angami should be killing it in TikTok. Spotify should be killing it. Like, these types of brands should be the ones that, not like, I don't want to see Al Marai yogurt, you know, no matter what you're doing with the yogurt.
you know, as a brand, all what you need to do is, you do the voiceovers on TikTok. You almost need, and you talk about this experiential thing, you almost need a campaign that is so catchy, so funny, that it almost becomes a meme in itself, and that meme translates into TikTok, right? And then it's replicated by its users. Brands that try to advertise on TikTok, it's going to get crushed because it's bullshit. And you know it's advertising. That's why the fucking people keep moving away from platforms that you start advertising on. But if you find a way to create like a following onto a platform where they're using it, where they can entertain their friends, then that's how the brand can take off. Now, brand recall versus like brand performance, we can go into all of this shit, but fundamentally that's the way in on that platform.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think there's a lot of waves to be made. I can guarantee I'm probably going to see an Al Morai yogurt advert. I'm going to think something genius
on Zoom.
And I'm going to on Zoom. Buy this banana bottle.
Yeah.
Buy banana bottle.
All right, man. Question for you, Hisham. Completely deviating. We spend our careers, I think you, me, Steve, and I'm not suggesting you guys have the same dilemma that I'm about to describe, but we spend our careers basically building brands, and fundamentally getting people to buy more shit, um, more more yogurt, more clothes, more shoes, more electronics, more groceries, more everything. We basically perpetuate the whole consumption and kind of this new lifestyle that's kind of slowly killing the planet and killing us. At a certain point, to take this a bit deeper of the conversation.
We're going deep.
Yeah, I'm because I've been in this state of mind. COVID hasn't been good to me, but at a certain point, you know, where do you kind of draw the line between, you know, questioning whether what you're doing is good or bad, or you know, having zero impact really, right? So for us, we try to, at least for me, I try to kind of justify it in the kind of clients we work with, but sometimes that's not, we don't have the luxury of that choice. And sometimes, you know, business is business. But how do you deal with that, or does that not even affect you, or how do you kind of justify it?
Let me answer you in a couple of layers. Number one, both are answered with balance. Number one, there's a balance that I think I have in my personal life. Now, I'm not a big fan of this kind of like work and life. Like I really strive that I have harmony in both, you know, and they are the same thing. And I think both of us feel the same about that. So I feel like the way that I live my life, especially the stuff that I try to do proactively in terms of like make sure I'm not damaging the environment, affecting other people negatively, etc., balances out maybe some of the more corporate stuff that I might be involved with. And I think in terms of also kind of one of the things about freedom is that we also work with brands like Royal Palestine. We're working with another brand called Chiron, who make swimming shorts out of kind of plastic waste from the ocean. I try to balance it by taking on clients and offering our services for the good of the world as well. And I think that's quite similar to what you guys are doing, obviously, with the UN as well, you know? At the end of the day, my major concern, obviously, now having an expecting family and all that kind of stuff, I have to focus on making sure that we have money to live a life that is kind of relatively balanced and well. But I also want to try to, in my personal life and in business life, try to make sure that I'm balancing them out. In terms of, and Freedom's a young company, but in terms of where I would like to be in the future, is I'd like to pick my clients better in terms of making sure that whoever we're working with and trying to carve a niche out client-wise of people that try to make people's lives better. You know, so if Kareem came along, for example, you could argue the case for that. If it's a Chiron, that's much more of a direct kind of like impact, or not something that's just like just throwing processed food off of a shelf or something like that. But I feel like it takes a long time to work towards that. And I think if your intention is always to get there, then your conscience should always be clean.
Yeah. I think people are always going to, consumption is always going to be there. I think that, Chris, I think the conversation that you and I have so much is that, you know, we're at a point where it's just consume, you know, in abundance as opposed to finding that balance. I think when you're creating brands as well, I think to Hisham's point, like you got the brand piece where you're able to kind of navigate and try and put that influence and that touch on a brand that helps navigate kind of what we would deem the right or a different approach. So it's not just focused solely on that consumption piece. And then ultimately in, you know, our world's, Hisham's world, you have a choice of who you want to partner with. And consumers are making that choice as well, and who they want to buy from. And creatives and marketeers are choosing who they want to work with. And it's not going to snap overnight. It's not an instant change. It will be a transition where people necessarily follow a trend, but also kind of grow a conscience in the sense of what their role is in this. And as that starts to snowball, it's where that trend comes in, and that'll be a natural progression. Will it ever reach where where people might want it to reach to? I think that's a question that we don't know the answer to.
But I have an issue with this whole purpose thing with companies. Now, I feel like when you've got like someone who's the founder or the leader or a small company where it's a CEO and he has a passion for something and he doesn't want to fuck up the world, or how he wants kind of equal rights for genders or age or whatever, I feel like that's fine. But any conversation I've had with a big brand that's about sustainability or purpose-driven motives or whatever it might be, they always talk about the business impact that it will have. And at the end of the day, they're just doing it because they see it as an opportunity to make more money. You know, and I feel like I was sending this picture to Christian the other day about there was a Harvard Business Review whole edition about purpose. And it is a really big topic, but it's only a topic because people think they're going to make more money if they act in that way. And I'm taking it a little bit deeper, but I just think that until the next thing comes along, we're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be talking about something else. I think when we're talking about real business change, real environmental change, or change in terms of real equality change or anything like that, we need to, I would focus my energy on smaller companies where I can look into the eyes of the person who's founded that company and I know that there's actually what they want to do, even if their company actually suffers because of it. You know, their opportunity suffers. So I think that's where I stand on that.
You think, but that's also my point with how this would be a journey over a period of time. I think as a trend forms, you are still going to get people on that bandwagon who are going to follow that trend to make money, right? But it's not going to be as clean cut as, you know,
it's not a bad thing as well.
No. It will flush out over time. And the thing is, we're living in an era where not everyone, but the majority of people have access to the information, right? The internet gives us access to every piece of information. Everything is more transparent than it used to be. So consumers will have that choice over time, and that choice will be something that will translate over time to the companies that people migrate towards. You know, you will know, and I mean, we're not going to name brands, but we could name brands that we know they greenwash versus brands that actually stand true to who they are, right? You can start to see them, and I do think that consumers can start to, you know, suss those out as well.
Hopefully. I don't have much faith in consumers.
Yeah. I mean,
after Brexit and Trump, I don't know who's out there anymore.
Yeah. I think inherently people are quite selfish and short-term minded, right? I think there are some people that are purpose driven. There are some people that care fundamentally about the planet and doing good. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but I still think that they're the minority. I think given a choice, people will never pick a more expensive product or service just because you know, it has a more positive impact, right? I think
you get in onto privilege at that point.
Yeah, I feel like that's not how you're going to solve the world, man. You're not going to solve the world by having more expensive positive impact products. If they're
Sky's kind of one of the first people who actually put, or that I've seen, they put like the less carbon footprint on the flights. But I would never choose that flight because the price difference is probably quite big compared to like what the actual impact is. Yeah, but I like the fact that they've done that though.
And if it's a longer flight, you're still not going to take it. You know what I mean? So the leading motivation will never be first to have a positive impact, right? I think that's for the general population. I do think there are, you know, niches and smaller segments of people who are driven primarily by that. I'm not saying those guys don't exist. I'm just saying you can't, you know, assume that people are always going to pick the better choice for the planet, no matter the price or sacrifice, right? So I do think at the end of the day, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say that price, at the very start of any kind of new wave or new trend, price will always be a factor, right? So things will tend to be more expensive. You think of mobile phones back in the day. How much was a phone book just to have the privilege of a phone? Now look at it. It's like people have 3 of them. You know, when you look at the cost of solar when it first came out was like, it's extortionate. You're never going to do that. But now look at the cost that's coming down. So that cost of doing good and change, of course, the early adopters, the people who are willing to pay that price premium, will pay that premium to start with. That's the privilege piece of having the choice to be able to. But then over time, as that drives, that will then create more efficiencies as that use case becomes more kind of viable. At which point the price comes down to more kind of like mid-consumer level. So again, that's why I'm saying I don't think it's like an on-off switch. Yeah. I think and you're going back to your point, which is, as consumers today, we are short-sighted. We want things now. We're very impatient. You know, and if you sit in a room and you have a conversation with like your grandparents, you know, their appreciation of time is so much more long-term, whereas ours is I need it tomorrow. So there's a different, and that consumer mindset is damaging in many ways, which is part of the whole problem of that we face today as marketeers when we're building brands, and also the issue for the planet and consumption.
Yeah, 100%. Hisham, what's your, I mean, given COVID and given how kind of everything kind of changed, the consumer habits, the purchasing habits, everything you do is basically, everything you consume is basically done sitting on your ass at home. Nowadays, I'm not speaking specifically about you, but all of us, yeah, but all of us.
It's like an awkward silence, just that tumbleweed of blow.
I just realized it sounded like all you do is sit home and buy shit. No, that's not what I meant. But I meant, how does that change, in your opinion, brands, right? So and branding and building brands, right? So I think it's the obvious stuff like, okay, so, you know, digital content is consumed way more than before, so presence is there. But how does that fundamentally change the brands itself? I mean, how are you guys kind of thinking about this when it comes to the clients that you're serving?
Okay, there's the superficial stuff, like there's the advertising, there's your content, there's the somewhat brand building and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to put that to the side. I think the most important thing is your experience in your product. I think there's so many brands that were so behind in terms of their online experience, logistic wise, customer service, everything around that are now trying to kind of, and it's just a load of rubbish. It's still so far behind just because they've tried to do it so quickly. So I'd really think that, I mean, I speak to a lot of brands now and they always say, oh, but we still need to churn out ads and make money and all that kind of stuff now. But I think the most mature way of looking at this period, especially at the beginning of it, was to seriously look at the experience and try to make sure that it's as perfect as possible for two scenarios. One, if COVID didn't last that long and you could just basically explode back on the market with a new kind of fresher offering and like all those little nitty gritty things that you should have taken care of, they're all done. Or two, if COVID lasts for a long time and you can adapt to this new world, which has happened. Yeah. So I definitely think that product and experience are really important. And I also think when looking at brands, and I think especially creatives do this naturally anyway, you've always got to look at the product itself. And I think that sometimes on the client side, you have that kind of like, oh, no, 1 second, no, we're just doing the marketing and branding and the logo and stuff. You can't change the product. And I think that's a massive red flag when you're looking at a really good partner to kind of work with. If they don't want to change the product, but they just want to, what do they say, put lipstick on the pig and throw it out, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I'm just afraid that once you go down the product kind of tunnel, it's a super dangerous route, especially as an external agency.
100%.
You know, it's a rabbit hole that you might not come out of, and it's extremely political. It's operationally very heavy, and cost-wise can drain an organization. Especially if you're under-empowered and you're not able to get, you know, decisions made and approvals. And, you know, I think a lot of organizations now understand, you know, customer experience, user experience, digital experiences that they need to build. They understand, you know, customer service, packaging, all that stuff that you were talking about. But the problem is, I think with most of these organizations, it's the change itself, right? So like, it's fundamental changes in organizations. Like their operations are fundamentally going to get turned upside down. And you're this external, you know, advisor coming in and saying, hey, I mean, this is what we think you should do. This is how we think you should do it, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, maybe your stakeholder or your, you know, point of contact is completely on your side, but then try to get it up kind of the higher echelons of the organization, it just falls apart because one, they don't know who the decision maker is, or two, they can't agree, align, or do anything, right? So I agree with you fundamentally, but I'm super kind of worried about older organizations these days, simply because even though they see the writing on the wall, it's not even about the will, it's about like the ability.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of organizations, especially in the Middle East, that have been around for more than like 20 years, I would say even 10 years, they're fundamentally not equipped with what they need to survive, right? And that really, really sucks, because I think we have some amazing brands out here that have so much potential, but they just are fundamentally stuck in an era, in a way of working, in a workflow, in a culture that is just not open to change at all.
Yeah.
And
no, I would agree with that.
And it's kind of worrisome, right? I mean, we have clients from, you know, different parts of the world, and we're seeing their rate and ability to change is mind blowing. You know,
but this goes back to the earlier point I was making about the ownership or the ownership structure of these companies.
Yeah.
Because if COVID happened and Apple was in the Middle East and Steve Jobs was still around, do you think Steve Jobs would rely on his marketing department to turn around the fortunes of his company? Would he let the agency or advisory is going to let them have contact with someone who's not the decision maker? You know, that person, the Steve Jobs, would be talking to, if need be, an agency or whatever, to come in and be like, we can change fucking everything because this is about survival. You know? So if you have the wrong person matched up with the wrong person internally, then it's always going to kind of not be successful. So I think, just to a point that you probably made to me about a year ago about choosing your clients. And if you're dealing with a CEO, you know that that project means something. And you have the power to change something and influence stuff. Whereas when you're just dealing with a subsection of the company or just the marketing department of a company, you know it's going to be pretty much superficial.
Yeah.
You know, which is a bit of a shame, which is when, like I always say, which is kind of Freedom's aim, is kind of like, I want to normalize strategic partnerships between agencies and companies. I don't want to have a marketing director as my clients. You know, I want it to be like, we are an implant into your company. And I feel like unless you're doing that, you're not really making change. You're just painting. You're running campaigns. If you're coming up with a brand, you're coming up with a brand, but the CEO is still going to have to sign it off, you know? So it's kind of like where those decisions are made and where you have room to change. COVID's serious. It's going to be the death of hundreds and thousands of companies. So if the CEOs still want to outsource that to the other departments who are going to outsource that to an agency, you deserve to die.
Oof. That's cold. Oof. That's cold.
As a business.
That's a soundbite.
I figured.
There you go. That's clickbait. We're going to use that.
I'm clickbaiting the shit out of that statement. Yeah, and I'm going to, you know, tag all your customers. But yeah, I completely agree, man. I don't disagree with you. Yeah, 100%.
Tag your own customers.
Yeah. I don't know where to go from here, man. I mean,
can I be even more controversial?
Yeah.
Segue. I made a statement to a friend of mine yesterday. We were just chatting. He's from the UK, and we're talking about. We have this group on WhatsApp, and we're always talking about like, when should things open up again? Look at what Sweden are doing. And there's multiple articles about Sweden. They're doing well. Oh no, loads of people are dying and all this kind of stuff. And the discussion was around comparing Europe and the Middle East on what's more important in terms of like keeping businesses open, the economy, or basically our safety. And I'm going to talk about it from a global perspective because I'm aware of kind of being too controversial. And I feel like this about the world as well.
Yeah.
I feel like we've replaced what we believe in terms of communities for what we now believe is the importance of economies. When you think about a community, the survival and welfare of the community is at the utmost of your responsibility. You know, anything can go wrong, anything can happen. Your community is the most important thing. But now you can say the same thing, but replace the word community with economy. And I think that shows that we're in quite a dark place. where people are now choosing the survival of the economy over the survival of their community.
That's when communities weren't so dependent on
That's what I was going
factors
to
that were
say.
outside of their control.
That's
like
what
when communities back in the day were more self-sufficient. Now they're more dependent.
I would take it a step further than that, though. I would say the only reason I agree with that statement, and I think it's a true statement, is simply because of the disparity between the rich and the poor. And also because the amount of people living on the edge of poverty is so high that the risk of a broken economy will put the safety of that community, which represents the majority in most of these countries globally, because the rich are richer than they've ever been, but they're a smaller group than they've ever been, right? So the concentration of wealth is so high at the top, and the majority of the population is living on poverty lines, basically. And if the economy defaults, then so does that community. And that community is so on the edge of like catastrophe that there's two choices. You either just give them money, you know, or you reignite the economy, which is a longer term sustainable means to keeping these people kind of in safety. You know what I mean? So it's like the situation is so bad in the economy and the majority of the population is in such a bad state that if you don't prioritize the economy, it's actually worse off for the community. I mean, there are people that don't have money for the next day. They don't have the means to get lunch for their families the next day. They're out of work. You know, they can't leave their house. If you think about how big the size of that population is and how bad their circumstances are and how much they've been worsened by COVID because they can't even leave their house, they can't even work, they can't even go buy food, and the availability of food and logistics is shut down, and that whole part of society is completely fucked. So, you know, so it's very hard to disassociate economy and community for that segment of population because the concentration of wealth is really high up and those people are not even feeling COVID like they're at all. But 90% or the majority are feeling it so bad. You know what I mean? So you can't disassociate. If you had a big middle class, if you had kind of a more level playing field, everybody had access to food, everybody had money in the bank, if things were completely different and economies were self-sustained, etc., then I agree with you. I think you would still rest more on the community side of the world. But I think that because of that gap, and by the way, like I looked at the data so much, I've been talking about, you know, real impact and real value creation for a long time. And all the data I've seen globally everywhere, it's not unique to any region, is that the rich are super rich, richer than they've ever been in a smaller concentration of people, and the poor are the poorest they've ever been, and they're the biggest population proportionally than they've ever been in the history. And people don't, I mean, if you think about like countries that are really in bad shape, if you look like, you know, India, China, you know, Egypt, sorry, not China, but like India, Egypt, etc. And you just look at those populations. I mean, could you tell a guy in one of the slums or those, you know, towns in India that he can't leave his house to work?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. To feed his family. Yeah.
Impossible, right? And you can keep me away
from
it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, COVID on a grand scale has shone a light on this on this problem in society.
Yeah, that gap.
Like the gap is never felt bigger. Like it already felt big, but it feels like a canyon. And people are aware.
And even when you look at developed markets, right? If you look at the US, they're shy of 40 million people declaring unemployment in the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks, right? 40 million people have declared unemployment just because of COVID. That's more than 10% of the population has lost their income in the last 7 to 8 weeks. 10%. Add that to the unemployment that was there before, let's say another 5-10%. That's 20% unemployment in a country of, you know, 300 million people. That's like 150, that's like 100 million people. It's like 80 million people. It's crazy, man. Right? So it's like, screw the community, man. These people have to live. They have to, you know, buy food. They have to turn on the heating. They got to pay rent. You know what I mean?
But if we, I mean, a lot of people have said that coronavirus is now the downfall of globalization and all that kind of stuff, and it sounds quite negative when you say it like that. But if we actually look at that, yeah, it accelerates the downfall of globalization. But if you think about the importance of, that's my alarm, I don't know what that's for though. If you look at the importance now, because like you said, we're so self-sufficient on economies and global economies and national economies. Maybe because globalization is dying, I don't think it is, but maybe we should start looking at making sure that we have self-sustainable communities, even at a medium to large scale. Maybe London, for example, Dubai should actually be self-sustainable, whether it's economically, whether it's in terms of resources and all that kind of stuff. But I think we need another hour for that one.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen,
I think we would need a part 2.
Yeah, short answer. I think that will be one of the consequences, but I don't think globalization will stop. I think local brands...
just move on to Zoom.
Yeah, I'll just move on to Zoom. I mean, look, people are buying online more than they ever bought online. And arguably buying online, it means access to more, further, faster. You know what I mean? So I don't generally believe that localization and, sustainable kind of logistics and, infrastructure supply chains is going to now become a national thing. No, I think you'll see more of that than you used to before. Will it be a wave that changes the world? I don't think so. I think people are going to buy more online than they ever did, which means they're going to buy more from Amazon that gets shipped from, Timbuktu, right? So I don't think that's necessarily going to be a trend that sticks, but who knows?
I disagree. I'm the opposite side. I actually believe and this is a good controversial point now. Who's going to, we'll probably be 2 old men by the time this plays out. But no, I actually see it going the other way. I think there will be I think there's many other factors at play. That's why I'd class COVID as just the accelerator to it. I think the trend was already on in terms of technology was already accelerating that kind of that shift. And I think going back to the point around consumption and people's behaviors, I think people will be much more conscious. So I see a shift. I don't see a complete collapse of it, but I do see more of an insular looking approach. And I think the points that you mentioned before of Trump and Brexit, I think that was already there.
I'm not going to debate you on this. The only thing I'm going to say is yes for your segment. Because
you want the last word? Is this the last word?
No, because you are, like all of us on the call, the privileged few at the top of the pyramid. But for the 90+% who just got online, not out of choice, but out of need, they don't have the same buyer's mindset as you, that they want to be good and they want to have positive impact. They want the cheapest good that they can get anywhere in the world to serve their need or want, right?
Okay, so think of the demographics of where the majority of that population sits, and do they get that good cheaper from an outside source that has a supply chain versus inside? Think of the economies. I don't want to name the places, but
depends on the goods and services.
Sure, buy local. I get the last word.
Hey, thanks, Hisham. Really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, Hisham.
We never did get to the. I know we can't mention on this on the call. The controversy that happened in the music app.
Oh, and Rami, I still haven't figured it out. I mean, I read a tweet from Eli and I read like a whole story of stuff, but I really don't understand what actually happened. I'm going to do my research. Maybe we'll have a part 2 to this, and maybe we could discuss it directly, because I think it's political. But anyways, cool. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice. Thank you. Thanks for the glasses.
Yeah, anytime. Hold on, I'm just going to put this at the end. Thank you, Barner. Not sponsored.
Yeah, sponsored by Barner.
Not sponsored by Barner. All right, man. Ciao, guys.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.